At Red Hat, we've been redefining what's possible with open source technology for decades. From Linux to Kubernetes and beyond, our open source expertise delivers an enterprise cloud platform to launch your business into new horizons. How? With a proven formula to accelerate digital transformation. We help you create high-performing teams who learn to build innovative applications running on a resilient platform for digital business. First, we build a platform designed to improve your developer productivity and operational efficiency. Our open hybrid cloud architecture ensures it's built with the flexibility to grow and change as you do. Second, we make it easy to build your own cloud-native applications and operate certified ISV software together. Merging your legacy workloads with open-source innovation gives you the power to reliably run differentiated technologies at scale. Third, we help you apply DevOps strategies to change the way you get work done. You'll empower your teams through self-service on demand, continuous learning, and a results-oriented mindset. Finally, we apply a metrics-driven approach to your transformation. Together, we establish customized dashboards to track your market agility and reliability in real time. You'll see shorter feedback cycles and more frequent deployments. Get updates out faster and delight your customers. Red Hat Services meets you where you are today and pushes you to greater heights. Join us to redefine what's possible for your business and transform with the power of open.
For many state and local agencies, providing citizen services quickly while embracing emerging technology is difficult. During this session, we'll hear from City and County of Denver, as they are a trailblazer in automation excellence, transforming their culture and technical infrastructure. Over to you, Casey and Holly.
Hi, SLED Nation. Thanks for joining us today for this awesome SLED event. My name is Casey Kelly. I'm an account executive for the state of Colorado, and I'm excited to announce our next guest, Holly Troy, with the City and County of Denver. Holly, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Holly Troy. My full name is Haleos, although I have found that most people cannot pronounce the name. Touch bases with me personally, and I'll tell you a whole story about it. But anyhow, my journey, my automation journey that got me to where I am with the City and County of Denver, actually started 34 plus years ago. I started off my career working for a company called Prime Computer and started cutting my teeth with Sun Microsystems and Sun OS. And as things developed, I got into Linux when it first started. And my earliest version of Red Hat was Red Hat 6 when it first came out in the early 2000s. And then, spent some time working in the Antarctic program for about 12 seasons, helping scientists with their, Windows, Linux, Unix environments and helping them with their stuff. And then after that, I wound up working for Denver University. At Denver University, I wound up becoming a puppet master, using Puppet as an automation tool there. And I reached a point with Denver University where I moved on to the City and County of Denver. And at that point, Ansible was just a word. I heard of it, but didn't know anything about it. However, because of my background in doing automation, it turned out to be an excellent fit. I was able to get up to speed with Ansible in a couple of weeks. We had an individual from Red Hat come in and help us, get our environment set up. And one of the things we did was set up Ansible Tower from a single node to a cluster. And at the time, I was trying to figure out what automation pieces need to be put in place first. And at the time, it's like, well, I need 2 more servers. And I put in the request and we use ServiceNow at the city. It's our primary tool for ticketing, and it took 3 weeks to have a server built out for me. And when I left DU, we had the server builds down to about 20 to 30 minutes. And so I approached my manager, Nick, and asked him, I think this is the first piece to tackle, and that's what started me along the journey. Now we build servers, whether it's Red Hat 7 or 8 and Windows 2016 and 2019, in under an hour, 45 minutes from start to finish, and we get the exact same server every single time. But along the way, there were key processes that kind of came along, such as integrating with ServiceNow, being able to close tasks and reassign tasks and update KB articles, and then our IP management and all the other pieces, so that the user requesting the server was able to receive a server that was exactly the same every single time, and that cut down a lot of the back and forth communication on hey, this isn't right and stuff like that. And so that was just kind of like in a nutshell, 34 years worth of my time, but nowadays I use Ansible quite a bit, and I'm very detailed in some of the stuff I do.
That's great. Thanks, Holly. That's a great intro to get us kicked off on the story of your automation journey. So I appreciate that. So the theme of the event, right, is resilience, recovery, rethinking, and how governments must be able to respond quickly, especially when situations change. Can you share a little bit about your modernization journey and the success that you've had there?
So I'm sure, as everyone is aware, we're currently in a global pandemic, and when that happened, I still remember the exact day and time in which they said go home. For me, it was roughly March 10th, and that first weekend, I was contacted by information security saying, "Hey, everyone's going home. We need to put users into a specific Active Directory group for them to have access to the VPN." And so because I had already done the ServiceNow piece with our server build process, I was able to quickly over that weekend, which was, I'll be honest, that's the first and only weekend I've had to work for the city overtime or anything like that, because it was a rush, because everyone was being sent home on a Friday, and come Monday morning, everyone's going to start working remote. And so the frameworks were already in place with some of the playbooks I had created. Then on top of that, it's like, well, we also had to switch from in-person, and nothing beats going over. I live in Cubeland. Walking over to the cubicle of the person you need to talk to and saying, "Hey, Joe, we need to have this done," and you can have that in person. So we switched overnight, literally, to using Microsoft Teams. So just before we all got sent home, I almost had the Microsoft Teams piece in place, but it was, anywhere from, another several days from being complete. And so that was fast tracked. So within that first week, I got with using Ansible Tower for the automated checking of, hey, do I have a new task in ServiceNow for me to execute against, to building out a team. And so what was interesting is to do it by hand, it would take from the customer submitting the ticket to the help desk assigning it to the right group, to the person creating the team and creating the channels. And don't worry if you don't understand all the pieces of Teams, but there's all these channels and groups and help pieces that go with it. And I was able to leverage Ansible with Microsoft Graph, with ServiceNow, and along with sending email results back to the individual. And so now the whole process takes 5 minutes. So if you're sitting at home on a Thursday night and say, I need to have my team built out, you can now put in that ServiceNow ticket, and depending on the timing, you can have that whole team ready for you to use within 5 minutes. And so literally that saved the city somewhere around 300 and plus man hours. I'm the guy writing the code. I don't do the stats for figuring out how much time people save, but when you start going 3 weeks for building a server to 45 minutes, from half an hour to 5 minutes for building a Microsoft team, those savings all of a sudden start to show up in weird places. For example, one of the metrics that we look at is the mean time to closure. How long does it take to close a ticket? Well, because of Ansible, I threw off all those stats, and all of a sudden they had to readjust everything because Ansible was closing the tickets, almost near real time. And because I had all these pieces that I built with the server build process and the VPN getting people in the right group, I was able to add that. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not the best coder out there, but through iterative fixing things as I'm going along, kind of in an agile DevOps kind of environment, I would literally be able to fix any issues that were arising as they were happening before people would realize, oh, hey, my team isn't built out quickly or right or anything like that. And then that also, allowed us to, do other sorts of things with Microsoft and Teams. So, and it was just an interesting journey there.
It's a really great story, and obviously this year it really kind of hits home, I think, for a lot of people. Could you imagine the situation last March with 15,000 people, who historically are an in-person workforce, to being sent home overnight, literally with desktop monitors in their hands? Could you imagine this without having the access to an automation tool and be able to do everything as quickly and easily as you did?
I couldn't imagine it because, to build, because there's always, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And so, to be able to automate that and know that you're going to get the same thing every single time. It doesn't, again, we're all human. We sometimes will you can't fix everything. For example, I had one person, put in there, I would like my team to be this. And so they got a team created. I would like this team to be this. And obviously that was not the team they wanted. So so in that process, you people learn that, okay, there's a process to building out the teams. And also, the other thing that was interesting is, our emergency operations center, because we all of a sudden had to go home and nobody could be in a closed environment anymore. And our emergency operations center, or EOC, was in a basement, with very little ventilation. And so that wasn't going to happen. And so I was tasked with helping virtualize our entire EOC. Because of Teams, you have the ability to apply Power BI templates and some other forms, that they use along with different channels and positional users. All the framework was there. So now, to spin up a new EOC, like let's say, for example, Denver had a recent snowstorm. I had a 4-foot drift in my front yard just a couple of weeks ago. They activated the emergency response center, and to build out that team, it took 15 minutes from the time they hit go. Can I make that time shorter? Maybe, but still, in 15 minutes to have a whole team with all the members and notifications and email passwords changed for the positional users, that is just, that Ansible automation really made a difference. I don't know. It's just the time savings, and of course, there's been other pieces along the way that has made people's lives easier. For example, we're no longer using Cisco phones the way we used to, and so we're looking at Microsoft Teams and adding a phone number. So Ansible is now part of that process. So we're going to be migrating anywhere from 2 to 500 people at a time off their Cisco phone to a Teams phone, and Ansible will be doing the heavy lifting for all that.
And I mean, how do you think that's changing the way the city and county of Denver works together as an organization across separate teams? Having the automation tool is fantastic, right? But do you think that that's changing the way that you as an organization, you all work together and collaborate?
Absolutely. One of the things, that's interesting is life moves on, and so do people move on. And so the city is currently, we're in a hiring freeze. We have furlough days. And because of that, management is quite aware that, we need to do more with less. I'm not sure of the numbers of people that have left our IT team, but, like you can see the results is the fact that they are starting to look at, hey, can some of your day-to-day processes be automated? And so as they've been asking those questions come up from, the users to the managers, and the directors are then saying, well, automation, well, you need to talk to Holly about that. You need to talk to Nick, or you need to talk to Sean. And we're starting to come up with processes to intake more automation requests, because you have to do more with less. And now the thing that's interesting is before the pandemic, as I would approach different departments saying, I need access to these systems so that I can tie it all together with Ansible, because Ansible is kind of like that magic glue. You have all these disparate systems, and how do you make them all work together? Well, I'll tell you, Ansible really makes that piece work. And so as I'm doing more with less, I tell people, look, I'm giving you back some of your free time so that you can be creative over here, or so you can focus in on some of the harder stuff. Let's take the day-to-day stuff. If my rule of thumb is if I have to do it once, I'll do it by hand. If I have to do it twice, maybe I should automate that. And the other thing that I tell people is, look, if you can flow chart what you're doing, I can help you automate that. That really helps them a lot. And I'll sit down with people and say, well, what's your end goal? What do you have to do? And so we're starting to come up with some interesting, innovation at the city because of all that. And, recently because of, and another initiative that the networking team is finally starting to look at, hey, well, we can use Ansible to take our 3,000 line Python script, break it down in some easily usable chunks, and then automate that so that other people can use and reuse what they're doing. And so we're starting to see more and more movement. Information security, is reaching out to me quite a bit for some of that, team effort. And they're starting to pick up some of the automation capabilities using Ansible. So it's almost like it's a whole cultural shift. And for myself personally, I'm loving it, because sometimes it's tough when you're the only person doing it. That really, now I can say, well, this other person can do some of the AWS cloud integration with Ansible. So, and I don't have to be as directly involved. I can be more the mentor. Let me show you the shortcut versus you taking the long way around to doing it.
Mm-hmm. And it really leads into the cultural change and the cultural transformation shifts that we're seeing, across the country, right? Or even further than that, getting teams away from working in separate silos where one team has one role and responsibility and then another team has another, where they still have silos to some degree, right? But it's calling for more team collaboration, and the use cases with Ansible are endless, right? And so it's pretty exciting to see how much you guys are taking advantage of that.
Absolutely. And you know, I mentioned it a little bit earlier about Ansible being the glue. If you can talk to the API, you can do whatever you need to do. Ansible has hundreds of modules that simplify working with different devices and different systems. And this is the interesting thing. If there is no module available for what you need to do, but you know how to do it, like for example, I know how to write Perl, I can write some Python, I can write Bash, Awk, SED, grep, all my favorite commands because I'm a Linux dude. Oh, I'm not going to leave out the Windows because the city of Denver is 80% Windows. I can write PowerShell these days. Yep. You can teach me new things. It doesn't matter what tool it is. I don't. At the end of the day, my goal is to automate as efficiently and as quickly as possible, so that other people can look at what I did and follow me. And so, and that's what I love about again the Ansible and the Ansible Tower. And the interesting thing is it's like I look at how Ansible works and how Tower works and all those pieces, and it's like it's fairly well rounded for our needs of the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, Holly, you mentioned kind of being newer to Ansible in the latter half of your 34-year career, right? Was it a challenge for you? Was it intimidating to kind of go down this route? Something new, something different? Did you have any kind of setbacks along the way?
Yeah, it's like it's one of those weird feelings you get. When I got hired at the city, like I said, I knew Puppet. I was a Puppet master. I knew it inside and out. I can write Ruby code with Puppet and nobody's business, but I didn't know anything about Ansible. And then the thing that I learned rather quickly about Ansible was, if I, all it was, once you take the concept of a task, right? A task is an individual piece. And so if I'm writing a Bash script, right? All that really is tasks, individual things, individual commands. I'm going to do something here and here and here. And once I made that mental leap, I was able to quickly come up to speed. There were some hurdles, along the way because some of the nomenclatures that translates over, and then you have to think to yourself, okay, well, how do I make this happen? It's not the question isn't, or not the question. The answer is never no. It's more of how can I make that work? So for example, I happen to be on the keto diet. Low carb. How can I have carbs? There's a way to make all those things happen, and Ansible does that. The city uses a MuleSoft, and I don't know much about MuleSoft, but it's a way to make all these different APIs kind of pull together and create custom APIs. And Ansible's kind of like that. Takes all these disparate pieces and pulls them together. And so that allowed me to grow quickly with Ansible. Again, I started off small. Here's a playbook. Hello world. Well, what can I do with that? We'll start building these pieces, and over time, I wound up with all these building blocks. And then once you have your building blocks, it's just like Legos. It's like, okay, the first block is, do I have any tasks assigned to me in ServiceNow? Okay, what's the next task? What are my variables I'm going to get from ServiceNow? Because once you have your variables that you need, you can do anything. because you know what you need. This user needs this service account created, so I go create that service account, and then I put the password in our password manager. We use Secret Server. And, then I update the ticket, create a KB article, close the ticket. All those building blocks are then in place. And so I've recently migrated to starting my journey with Ansible collections. I'm not the smartest or sharpest tool at the time with collections, but I'm making progress. It's all about figuring out what it is. Well, I started with roles. I can create a role. And it turns out that, collection is really just a larger entity, and you can stick a role right in there and boom, you're done. Now I can have a collection that I can now give to all the different departments saying, use this collection and this piece and say, do I have any tasks? And other people can now leverage and reuse my code without having to know anything about it, which is then very helpful, because we're starting to see more and more people wanting to do Ansible and automation with it. And that's if you don't have the right blocks in place over time, it just makes rewriting the wheel or recreating the wheel over and over again just that much more difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So Holly, as we wrap up today, what's one last thing that you would want to share with some of your local, state and local government colleagues or peers? What's one last thing that you would want them all to know?
Gosh, I wish I had another couple more hours. Okay. So everybody's journey is going to be different. And depending on whether you're a CIO or just a manager or just an end user here, at SLED today, there are people in your organization that want to automate. Find those people and, give them what the city gave me, which is time. I happen to have been given an opportunity right at the beginning to have, time to ramp up with the automation and learn the tool. That's probably the biggest thing is there are people there, and just leverage them. They want to do it. I'll be honest, there are organizations I have talked to in the past year that don't have the time, or they have too many silos. Get everyone together on Teams or Zoom or Blue Jeans. Say, hey, let's do this. How can we make this happen? And you'll find that individual, he or she will want to go and do this stuff, and get them the training. If I can make the journey, as a dude, anybody can.
Absolutely. That's great, Holly. Well, per usual, I really enjoyed this conversation, this chat. We always have a lot of fun with you, and we appreciate your appreciation for the tool and your partnership and relationship with Red Hat. We really sincerely appreciate that. So,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time today. Up next, Sean Greer, the IT Director, Service Delivery with the City and County of Denver, will be joining live Q&A. Stay tuned. Hey, Holly.
Hey, Casey. Hey, Libby. Hey, Sean.
All right. So, Libby, should I just go ahead and kick off some of the questions that I see in the chat?
Yes, please. A reminder to the audience to please keep adding your questions into the Q&A box so we can get it answered live from Holly and Sean.
Great. Awesome. Well, hello, SLED Nation. Excited to be here. One of the questions that we have, Holly and Sean, directed for you guys is, has automation and Ansible helped different teams within your organization collaborate more? If so, could you provide an example of 2 or more teams that now work more closely together and what role automation played?
Yeah, I think I can talk to that. So we have an operations team. I'm part of the architectural engineering team, and then we have our networking team. And so one of the things that the operations team would constantly do is go to the networking team to ask for new DNS names and IP address assignments. And so Ansible, I built basically a form within Ansible Tower that lets the operation team go in there and put in the DNS and the subnet that they need, and it creates and reserves an address for them. And it's actually cut down on hours of time. And as I've seen the two teams work together, the networking team has seen that piece and started doing a lot more of their integration with Cisco routers. And so they're actually talking more about, hey, how can we help operations create other forms to help them do their tasks that gives the networking team more time to do what they need. And of course, I work pretty closely with information security almost on a daily, weekly basis.
Absolutely.
Next, Don, have anything to add to that as far as?
Might be on mute still. So two-part question for Holly. You mentioned a lot of requests from security and automation. Can you expand on some of those use cases?
Absolutely. I'll give you the most recent use cases. So security is set up an elk stack or elastic cluster for sending all these logs. And one of the pieces that they needed is they want to do data enrichment. And so they asked me if I can write a couple of pieces to grab CrowdStrike data and Active Directory data and send that to Logstash. And so I built a couple automated tasks that run at 1 a.m. that go out and grab the most current information and populate that within Logstash. So that was the most current piece. They do a lot of pieces where they're one of the more recent ones is monthly they want to take our existing Windows servers, build one out. They run a set of scripts against it to build all these hashes that they then load into their Qualys product. I don't know anything about Qualys, but I just took the PowerShell script that they gave me, wrapped it in Ansible, set it up so that it builds a server once a month. It builds it up, destroys it, and all happens, once a month overnight, and everybody gets their data. I think there's a second part to that question.
Yes. And are those folks learning to write the automation or primarily rely on you to write them for them?
Right now, I'm the primary person. There are two people in InfoSec right now that are coming up to speed with Ansible. We meet every couple weeks, and I kind of show them some of the stuff that I'm working on right now. Trying to point them, and it's like, okay, let's get your environment set up. We use Azure DevOps for Git repos, and I use VS Code for all my editing. So it's like I've helped them recently get that piece set up so that they can start to write some of their own code and get things worked out. It's sometimes people will look at what I've done and say, well, that's a little daunting. So I start them off with something simple. What do you need to do first? Do you need to talk to a Linux box or do you need to talk to Windows? Once we determine that, it's like, okay, here's a framework for talking to Windows. It's dead simple. Everything goes here, you put in your code, and then let's go ahead and try some things out, and I have them drive so that they get the hands-on, just the person over their shoulder,
Absolutely. That was something we talked about too, Holly, in our kind of preparations for your interview, as bringing on new people to the team as well. how are you kind of documenting some of that? How much time and effort do you spend documenting what you're doing so that you're not constantly having to retrain and kind of explain everything?
Well, maybe it's just me, but I'll look back at code I wrote a year ago and go, what genius wrote that? And go, this is amazing. But so I've gotten really good in recent years and writing lots of comments in my code. I would say that my average playbook contains a third is comments, and I will go out of my way to comment pieces that I found specifically difficult to figure out, and at that point I will then say, as I reuse that piece of Ansible code, I won't necessarily document it as heavily, but I'll make a reference to where I initially documented it. For example, using JSON query within a fact. I'm not the best JSON person, but I figured it out with the help of Jason Rist, one of the Red Hat engineers, and I documented that piece, and so off I went. And so a lot of my code, even when I'm doing PowerShell or Bash or whatever language, that's all commented, so that again, someone going along looking at what I've done. And the other thing is Ansible and the YAML files are almost self-documenting themselves. As long as you remember that with each task you use the name and you be descriptive on the name, that makes life a lot simpler.
Absolutely. Joseph asks, how did you convince everyone around the logic it's cheaper to stay status quo in terms of not rewriting existing scripts that would work than to convert to new automation language like Ansible?
So if I got the question right, it's like taking, not rewriting some of the scripts, using those and wrapping those in Ansible versus writing new. Correct me if I get that wrong. Sometimes the script as is or the program as is, it works fine. Why rewrite the code? A really good example is one of the networking people is one of our Cisco phone guys, and we get requests all the time for Cisco phone password resets. We looked at does he rewrite the code? Do I rewrite the code? Well, no. Let's just take what he has, add a couple of lines in there so we can variabilize it, and then that way we know it works. So let's just reuse it. It just saves a lot of time because, I can go back and look at my server build process, which is coming up on, year and a half old now, and go, I should rewrite that. But do I have the time? If it works now, again, it's like, do you really need to change it? Or can you just wrap it in Ansible and modernize it?
Yeah, and Holly hit one of the key factors to our journey through this, and that is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect on the first try, and our customers aren't asking for that. And if we're able to make what is working at an enterprise level function at that enterprise system and understand what it's doing and automate portions of it, we're winning and we're saving time, and we're giving valuable time back to all of our employees to be able to go do, for lack of a better term, fun stuff. I don't think all of us like doing the rigor of the same thing every day when we come into work, and we're trying to allow them to go out and make a difference and give value to the citizens and do those sorts of things. So that it's great to be perfect, but we don't have to be to add value.
I'm anything but perfect.
Oh, Holly. From the network security aspect, have you been able to automate the daily vulnerability scans on ports and devices, or audit active and disabled users in the system based on a report of disabled or terminated users generated throughout the day?
Oh man, I think that's going to be added to my Ansible planning task board. Yeah, to see Sean copying and pasting that. I have not done any of that particular work. I know that every 2 weeks I have a meeting with information security. A bunch of us get together, and they are working on different aspects of what you asked. And I believe as they see an automation piece that Ansible can do for them, they will then ask for that to be done. But I have not done any daily vulnerability scans and stuff like that. I know that information security is doing that stuff. We primarily rely on CrowdStrike for a lot of stuff, and I know that they're pulling all that data into our Elastic cluster for doing something with it. I honestly don't know. That's an excellent question.
Sean, I'm sure Sean took that one down too.
Well, I mean, I think this is a perfect example of, our networking team uses different automation tools to gather network devices and things like that. But, what the first question we ask is, do you have an Ansible integration? And how can we leverage Ansible to kick off automations through the product we're using happens to be NetBrain, and that's one of the pieces. And we don't want to rewrite or rebuild the wheel if it already exists somewhere. We want to use Ansible to just automate it and do things more efficiently. And I know that probably doesn't directly answer the question, but a lot of the work of device discovery and ports and scanning is done within other systems, but leverages Ansible to do the automated tasks.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Sean. Holly, how did you get so good at writing playbooks in Ansible? And what would you suggest for someone who is new to Ansible or YAML?
So I picked up a book right when I started at the city. I think it was Ansible for DevOps. I don't know if it's I will find the title and post it in the chat in a few minutes. And that book kind of got me started with learning how to do Ansible and YAML. Now Puppet has YAML files in there too, and again YAML is interesting. I found that if I don't turn on vertical lines to see where my stuff is, I will always get lots of YAML failures. But yeah, this Ansible for DevOps book, it works great for using that book at home because of the city's network and how everything works. There was a different structure, but it's what got me started quickly.
So I'm going to throw a question out there, Holly. We hear this a lot. Why would I use Tower versus Free or AWX?
Okay.
You're passionate about that.
So, free is not necessarily free all the time. You have to have on your team I like to think of it as the talent. I feel I'm talented enough that I can do AWX open source when you upgrade from version to version. I like to know somebody who doesn't have a problem doing that, because I've tried it in my test environment and had lots of issues. And then of course, by going that route, it's like, now I'm tied to the community, trying to find out problems for some of my issues. By going with Tower, I'm not trying to promote that everyone should use Tower, but for me, I can place a ticket with Red Hat, for support, and have my problem solved rather quickly. To give you a real world example, I'm setting up my Ansible Tower to send data to Logstash for logging. Well, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that the user account populated automatically, and my password has spaces in it. Well, it turns out a space didn't work well and crashed my tower system. And that was a panic on a Friday afternoon, and never do stuff on Friday afternoons. But, Red Hat support called me right back within the hour. We got the whole thing resolved, and then we did a deep dive into how this problem occurred, and how to avoid and recover from this. So that adds a peace of mind. And then I also have a kind of a flow chart of when I go on vacation, what do you do? And so there's all these steps of, how do you recover from specific problems if you have these? And one of those columns is called Red Hat, because everything is in Ansible Tower. It's all YAML code. It's all, I'm using the Red Hat certified modules. That engineer who comes in and looks at it can figure out what happened and solve the problem if I'm on vacation, which when this pandemic is over, I'm going on vacation. So yeah, that's my main thing is, again, it's like, do you have the talent and resources to run your own AWX instance? If not, Ansible Tower is a great way to go.
See more. When writing Ansible, I tend to write a really dense code. Why duplicate when I can just loop? Would you generally recommend this approach, or a less dense and easier? I'm sorry, my glasses.
Uninitiated. Yeah, okay. It all depends on what you're trying to do. For example, I've done nested loops, and nested loops, when that was, again, going back to documentation, I documented that little piece pretty heavily because what I was doing was pretty nice. The way my brain sometimes works, I'm a very linear kind of person. If linear is the way to go, then I'll go that route. Because we have multiple Active Directory domains, I use a lot of loops because I need to see where specific users are located and for group stuff. So I've slowly, it's kind of like a 50-50 between straightforward or doing dense stuff with loops. It just depends on what needs to be done at the time.
And then we had one more, trying to find now in the chat. So from Colin, I'd love to hear more about how Denver's automation efforts have benefited the citizens.
You want me to take that, Holly?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start, and I'll let you polish it off.
Sure.
One of the things that I was approached with was a friend of mine worked in the recycling division, and they had an online form for e-cycle coupon requests, and so I automated that process. So a citizen goes and fills out a form, says I want to recycle my monitor. That goes into Office 365 email account, and once a night, Ansible comes in, looks for all the new coupon requests, sees whether or not the person has lived in the city, see whether they've already been given their one free coupon for the year, and then sends them an email and sends the tabulated spreadsheet to the people to mark it off and actually mail the coupon. So that's one benefit that the citizens, some of the citizens are directly seeing.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to this question. There's the indirect benefit that the citizens see, and I think everything that we do with this platform in making what we do more efficient benefits, or more secure for the city, benefits the citizens, right? Because we're doing things that either secure the information they're giving us better, allow the workers that are doing the actual tasks to do them more efficiently and effectively for them. And all of that's done in the IT infrastructure behind, which Holly has gone in depth about all the different things that we've been doing. You know, as far as a direct integration to the citizens, most of it is, again, us on the back end utilizing the front-facing applications that already exist there. So we're able to automate processes between systems to do processes that used to be manual. And Holly's example is perfect. And that's what we're starting to see right now as people realize we have this capability. So, you know, there's not a lot of direct facing stuff at this moment, but I expect there to be a lot in the upcoming year.
I believe we have one last question. So question about scale, how many stations or users are you supporting?
How many? That's a good question. You know, right now, most of the automation stuff, you know, is within the technology services department. As a number of users, I'm really not sure. As the number, you know, any thoughts there, Sean?
Yeah, so we have about 15,000 employees, give or take, on a given month between all of the different agencies and departments across the city. So we support those users. That obviously there's a multitude of devices. Holly's done some work on our camera system that has 3,000 plus cameras throughout the city to automate some of those things. So there's a lot of IoT sensor type devices. I don't want to even guess how many when we start incorporating our traffic system with the traffic lights and traffic cameras and all of that kind of stuff that's out there. So, you know, in the many hundreds of thousands of devices, more than likely.
I can see Ansible doing some kind of drift control and stuff like that with the IoT devices.
All right, Libby, I don't see any more questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I don't know if you're done with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. A big thank you to Holly and Sean and Casey for a really great session. I feel like hearing the ins and outs of City and County of Denver on their automation journey not only is exciting to hear about, but it's also really helpful for other state and local government agencies to hear it so they can learn best practices as well. So thank you all very much. And for the attendees in the audience, stay tuned. Up next, we're having a sector spotlight on health and human services at the state and local government level. So it'll be a really exciting session with participants from Washington Health Benefits Exchange, Deloitte, and more. So we'll see you at the top of the hour in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.